The arrival. Supreme Chancellor Draxion stood before the holographic display in the Grand Council chamber, his three eyes fixed on the sensor data that had just arrived from the outer perimeter. Around him, representatives from 47 member species of the Galactic Supremacy Council murmured in confusion and concern. The chamber, carved from a single massive crystal that had taken 3 centuries to grow, had hosted countless diplomatic sessions over its 1,000-year history. But never had the atmosphere been this tense. The holographic image showed something that should not exist. A vessel of unprecedented size was approaching the capital system at speeds that defied conventional physics. What troubled the Council most was not merely its size or speed, but its appearance. The ship looked like it had been assembled by someone who had never heard of proper engineering. Draxion magnified the image, and gasps echoed through the chamber. The vessel was a nightmare of mismatched components welded together in apparent chaos. Thick metal plates covered its surface, bolted and riveted in layers that seemed random. Massive engines jutted from its rear section at angles that violated every principle of symmetry. Weapon emplacements bristled from its hull like thorns on a dying plant. Cables and pipes ran along its exterior, exposed to space, as if the builders could not be bothered to hide them inside. Chief Military Strategist Kellner, a towering reptilian from the warrior world of Thraxis, approached the hologram. His scales rippled with agitation as he studied the vessel. The readings made no sense. The energy signature was massive, easily 10 times that of their most powerful dreadnought. Yet the technology appeared primitive, inefficient, and wasteful. Draxion activated the communication system. The face of Admiral Tychon appeared on the secondary display. The Admiral commanded the defense fleet stationed at the system's edge, the first line of protection for the capital world. His expression showed a mixture of confusion and fear that Draxion had never seen before. The Supreme Chancellor spoke with measured calm, though his heart beat rapidly. He asked for a full report on the approaching vessel. Admiral Tychon explained that his fleet had first detected the anomaly 6 hours earlier. Initial readings suggested a large asteroid moving through hyperspace, which was impossible. Asteroids did not travel faster than light. As the object drew closer, their sensors revealed it was artificial. The vessel had dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge and was now moving toward the capital world at sublight speeds. Draxion questioned whether they had attempted communication. Tychon confirmed they had broadcast on all standard frequencies in every known language. The vessel had not responded. It simply continued its approach, neither threatening nor friendly, just inexorably moving forward like a force of nature. Science Director Velnara, a crystalline being whose body refracted light in beautiful patterns, approached the display. Her analytical mind processed the data with remarkable speed. She pointed out several anomalies in the vessel's construction. The energy readings suggested the use of nuclear fusion technology, something most civilized species had abandoned millennia ago in favor of more efficient antimatter systems. The ship's hull appeared to be composed primarily of iron and its alloys, materials so common and heavy that modern shipbuilders use them only for the most basic internal structures. Yet despite these primitive materials and outdated technology, the vessel was producing energy output that rivaled their most advanced ships. More disturbing, its speed and maneuverability suggested propulsion systems far more powerful than anything in the Council's arsenal. It was as if someone had taken technology from the dawn of spaceflight and somehow made it work at levels that should be impossible. Kellner suggested they might be dealing with a derelict vessel from an ancient civilization, perhaps automated and wandering through space. But Velnara dismissed this theory. The ship's course corrections were too precise, too purposeful. Someone was definitely piloting this monstrosity. Draxion ordered Admiral Tychon to position the defense fleet between the vessel and the capital world. If the ship showed hostile intent, they needed to be ready. He also commanded that all long-range scanners be focused on the approaching vessel. They needed more information. Over the next hour, data streamed in from multiple observation stations. Each report made the situation more confusing. The ship's interior appeared to contain vast open spaces filled with equipment that defied easy categorization. Sensor readings detected thousands of life forms aboard, all clustered in what appeared to be habitation sections near the vessel's center. The life signs were carbon-based, bipedal, and disturbingly familiar. Velnara accessed the Council's historical database, searching for matches to the biological readings. The silence in the chamber deepened as she worked, her crystalline fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Finally, she found what she was looking for, and her glow dimmed with shock. The biological signatures matched a species the Council had encountered 300 years earlier. A primitive species from a small blue world on the galaxy's outer rim. A species the Council had dismissed as too violent, too chaotic, and too technologically backward to warrant serious attention. A species that had been warring among themselves when the Council scouts visited their world. Humans. The word sent a ripple of reaction through the chamber. Many Council members had never heard of them. Those who had remembered humans as little more than an interesting footnote in the galaxy's history. A species barely capable of space travel, still using chemical rockets to escape their planet's gravity well. A species so fractured by internal conflicts that the Council had decided to leave them alone, assuming they would either destroy themselves or eventually develop into something worth contacting. But this vessel was not the work of a primitive species. This was the product of a civilization with resources, determination, and technological capability that rivaled or exceeded the Council's own achievements. Draxion demanded to know how this was possible. How could a species go from barely reaching their own moon to building this enormous warship in just 3 centuries? Velnara explained that 300 years was not actually a short time. Many species had made significant technological leaps in that period. But usually such advancement came with guidance from more developed civilizations. The humans had done this entirely on their own. Kellner pointed out another disturbing fact. The vessel's weapons were not energy-based like most modern military hardware. Instead, the ship carried what appeared to be kinetic projectile weapons of enormous size. Massive cannons that would fire solid projectiles at tremendous velocities. Such weapons were considered obsolete, too slow and inaccurate for space combat. But the size of these cannons suggested they could fire projectiles large enough to destroy a small moon. In space combat, where every gram of mass was carefully calculated, the humans had built a ship that carried thousands of tons of ammunition. It was madness. It was inefficient. It was wasteful. Yet somehow it worked. The Admiral reported a new development. The vessel was slowing down. It had reached a position above the capital world's orbit and was holding station. Still no communication, but the positioning suggested the ship was waiting for something. Draxion made a decision. He ordered the Admiral to transmit a message on primitive radio frequencies, the kind the humans had been using when the Council scouts visited their world centuries ago. Perhaps they would respond to their own old technology. The chamber waited in tense silence as the message was sent. It was a simple greeting in the human language that Council records indicated was most widespread on their world. The message identified the Galactic Supremacy Council and requested that the unknown vessel identify itself and state its intentions. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then, the communication array crackled to life. A voice came through, speaking in heavily accented but comprehensible galactic standard. The voice was female, confident, and carried an edge of amusement. The speaker identified herself as Commander Elena Vasquez of the United Earth vessel Prometheus. She apologized for the delayed response, explaining that her crew had been debating the proper diplomatic protocols. Humans, she noted, were still learning the finer points of galactic etiquette. Draxion felt his primary heart skip a beat. United Earth. That implied the humans had overcome their internal divisions and unified their entire species. Such unity was rare and often indicated a civilization's maturation into a serious galactic power. The Supreme Chancellor responded, welcoming Commander Vasquez and expressing the Council's surprise at humanity's technological advancement. He asked, perhaps more bluntly than diplomatic protocol suggested, how they had achieved such progress in what seemed like a relatively short time. Commander Vasquez's laugh came through the speakers, a sound both warm and slightly threatening. She explained that, from humanity's perspective, 300 years was a long time. 12 generations of humans had lived and died since the Council scouts visited Earth. In that time, humanity had undergone transformations that would have seemed impossible to their ancestors. She described how humanity had finally achieved global unity following a series of crises that nearly destroyed their civilization. Facing extinction, humans had set aside their differences and focused on survival. They had poured every resource into advancing their technology, not because they sought to conquer the galaxy, but because they needed to ensure humanity's future among the stars. The Prometheus, she explained, was the culmination of centuries of effort. Built from asteroids mined throughout their home system, powered by fusion reactors that represented the pinnacle of human engineering, and crewed by volunteers who had trained their entire lives for this mission. The ship was not elegant or efficient by galactic standards, but it was tough, reliable, and powerful. It represented humanity's approach to engineering. If it worked, it was good enough. Kellner asked the question on everyone's mind. Why had humans come to the capital system? What did they want? Commander Vasquez's response was simple and profound. Humanity wanted recognition. They wanted the Council to acknowledge that humans existed, that they had a right to exist among the stars, and that they deserved a place at the galactic table. They were not asking for special treatment or seeking to conquer anyone. They simply wanted to be seen as equals. The chamber erupted in debate. Some council members argued that humanity's aggressive approach bordered on threatening. Others pointed out that the humans could have attacked immediately if that was their intention. The fact that they were asking for dialogue suggested they sought peaceful integration into galactic society. Draxian studied the image of the Prometheus on the holographic display. The ship was ugly, crude, and built with technologies most species considered obsolete. Yet it was here, in orbit above the capital world, having crossed vast distances of space through sheer determination and ingenuity. The humans had proven they could not be ignored. He made his decision. The Council would meet with Commander Vasquez. They would hear what humanity had to say. But first, they needed to understand more about what humanity had been doing for the past 3 centuries. He ordered long-range scouts to travel to the human home system and assess the full extent of human expansion. Commander Vasquez agreed to wait for 3 standard days while the Council prepared for formal negotiations. In that time, the Prometheus would remain in orbit, a massive reminder that humanity had arrived on the galactic stage whether the Council was ready or not. As the communication ended, Draxian looked around the chamber at the worried faces of the Council members. For 1,000 years, the Galactic Supremacy Council had maintained peace and order across hundreds of worlds. They had seen species rise and fall, had mediated conflicts and fostered cooperation. But they had never encountered anything quite like humanity. A species that built ships from scraps and made obsolete technology work through sheer stubbornness. A species that unified in the face of extinction and emerged stronger than before. A species that arrived at the capital world not begging for admission, but demanding recognition as equals. The galaxy was about to change, and no one knew whether that change would be for better or worse. The revelation. The Council's scout ships returned from the human home system 3 days later, and their reports sent shockwaves through the entire government. What they found was both impressive and terrifying. Commander Jasaira, the lead scout, presented her findings to the full Council assembly with barely concealed amazement in her voice. Earth, the human homeworld, had been transformed. The planet itself showed signs of careful environmental restoration after what appeared to have been centuries of industrial damage. But the space around Earth told a different story. Massive orbital facilities ringed the planet, each one dedicated to different aspects of human expansion into space. Manufacturing stations, research laboratories, shipyards, and habitation modules formed a metal belt around the blue world. But Earth was just the beginning. Humanity had spread throughout their entire star system. Mars had been partially terraformed, with domed cities visible on its surface and underground facilities that extended kilometers into the planet's crust. The asteroid belt had been systematically mined, with major rocks hollowed out and converted into mobile stations. Even the outer planet's moons showed signs of human habitation, with bases established in some of the most hostile environments imaginable. Jasaira displayed holographic images of human facilities built on a moon with surface temperatures cold enough to freeze carbon dioxide. structures erected on a volcanic moon where the surface was constantly being reshaped by geological activity. Stations floating in the upper atmospheres of gas giants, harvesting hydrogen and helium for fuel. Humans had gone to places no other species would consider inhabitable and made them work through engineering audacity and sheer determination. More concerning were the scout reports of humanity's military capabilities. The Prometheus was not alone. 7 more ships of similar size were detected in various stages of completion in orbital shipyards around Earth. Smaller vessels, probably equivalent to Council frigates and destroyers, numbered in the hundreds. The humans had built an entire fleet while the galaxy remained ignorant of their activities. Velnara analyzed the technological data the scouts had gathered. Human technology was indeed primitive compared to Council standards, but they had pushed their older technologies to extremes the Council had never considered. Their fusion reactors operated at temperatures and pressures that would terrify most engineers, yet somehow they maintained stable operation. Their hull materials were basic alloys, but they used them in such thickness and with such clever structural designs that they were more durable than advanced composite materials. The humans had also developed their faster-than-light travel independently. Their method was brutish and energy-intensive, literally punching temporary holes in spacetime rather than elegantly sliding through hyperspace corridors like Council ships. It was dangerous, unstable, and consumed enormous amounts of power. It also worked remarkably well and appeared to be faster than most Council vessels. Draxion listened to the reports with growing respect and concern. Humanity had done what many thought impossible. They had bootstrapped themselves from a pre-spaceflight civilization to a multi-system power in just 3 centuries, with no outside help or guidance. They had proven that determination and ingenuity could compensate for technological limitations. But the most alarming report came from Scout Commander Merlin, who had ventured beyond the human home system, following traces of unusual hyperspace signatures. What he found suggested humanity's expansion was far more extensive than anyone had imagined. 12 other star systems showed clear signs of human colonization. Each system contained at least 1 planet or large moon with human facilities. Some were small outposts with just a few thousand inhabitants. Others were full colonies with populations in the millions. Humanity had quietly claimed a substantial region of space and begun developing it with characteristic efficiency. They had not asked permission because they did not recognize the Council's authority over unexplored space. From their perspective, they were simply expanding into empty systems that no one else wanted. The debate in the Council chamber was intense. Some members argued that humanity's unauthorized expansion violated galactic territorial agreements. Others pointed out that most of the systems humanity had colonized were in regions the Council had officially designated as unsuitable for habitation. The humans had gone where no one else wanted to go and made those places work. Kellner raised a critical question. If the Council challenged humanity's claim to these systems, were they prepared to enforce their authority militarily? The reports suggested humanity had become a formidable power. Their ships were crude but effective. Their weapons were primitive but powerful. Their people were united and determined. A conflict with humanity would be costly, and victory was not guaranteed. This admission sent ripples through the chamber. For centuries, the Council had been the unquestioned military power in the galaxy. Now they faced a species that could potentially challenge them, a species that had emerged from nowhere in historical terms. Commander Vasquez was invited to address the full Council. She arrived in a small shuttle, accompanied by 3 members of her crew. Her appearance surprised many Council members. She was tall for a human, with dark hair pulled back in a practical style and eyes that seemed to take in everything. She wore a simple military uniform that was functional rather than decorative. Everything about her suggested competence and confidence. As she stood before the Council, Vasquez spoke without notes or prepared statements. She explained humanity's journey over the past 3 centuries with remarkable candor. She described how humanity had nearly destroyed itself through war, pollution, and resource depletion. How they had stood on the brink of extinction and made a collective choice to change. How they had unified their fractious species through shared purpose and common goals. She talked about the challenges humanity faced expanding into space. the accidents that killed thousands, the failures that set programs back decades, the resources poured into projects that ultimately did not work. But through every setback, humanity had learned and adapted. They had developed a philosophy of engineering based on simplicity, redundancy, and robustness. If something could fail, they built backups. If a design was too complex, they simplified it. If elegant solutions did not work, they used crude ones that did. The Prometheus, she explained, embodied this philosophy. It was not beautiful, but it was reliable. It was not efficient, but it was powerful. It was not advanced, but it worked. The ship could sustain damage that would cripple a council vessel and continue fighting. Its crew could survive for months without external support. Its weapons could target enemies using nothing more sophisticated than visual tracking if all electronic systems failed. Vasquez then addressed the question everyone wanted to ask. She explained that humanity had no desire for conflict with the Council or any other galactic power. They had seen enough war and death on their own world. They understood the cost of violence. But they also would not be denied their right to exist among the stars. They had worked too hard and sacrificed too much to be told they could not expand into empty space. She presented humanity's proposal. The Council would officially recognize human territory in the systems they had already colonized. In return, humanity would share their unique approaches to engineering and their experience surviving in hostile environments. They would contribute to galactic security by patrolling regions of space that other species found too dangerous or uncomfortable. They would participate in council trade and accept certain regulations regarding expansion into already claimed territories. What humanity wanted most was simple: respect. They wanted to be treated as equals, not as primitives or potential threats. They wanted the opportunity to prove themselves worthy members of galactic civilization. The council debated for hours. Some members remained skeptical of human intentions. Others saw opportunity in humanity's unique capabilities. Velnara pointed out that humanity had developed solutions to problems the Council had never seriously addressed. Their ability to survive and thrive in hostile environments could be valuable. Their engineering philosophy of robust simplicity might offer alternatives to the Council's sometimes fragile high-technology approaches. Finally, Supreme Chancellor Draction called for a vote. The decision was not unanimous, but a clear majority of council members voted to recognize humanity's territorial claims and open negotiations for full membership in the galactic community. As Vasquez received the news, she allowed herself a brief smile. She thanked the council for their wisdom and promised that humanity would prove worthy of the trust being placed in them. She also made one final statement that would be remembered for generations. She noted that humanity had learned a valuable lesson during their centuries of isolation, that species should be judged not by their technology or their appearance, but by their actions and their character. As the Prometheus prepared to depart, carrying news of the Council's decision back to Earth, Draction reflected on the significance of what had just occurred. The galaxy had gained a new major power, one that had bootstrapped itself to prominence through determination and ingenuity. The humans would undoubtedly face challenges as they integrated into galactic society. Their crude technology and rough manners would need refinement. But they had proven they could overcome obstacles that would stop most species. The arrival of the Prometheus had changed everything. The Council's position as the sole dominant power in the galaxy had ended. A new era of multipolar galactic politics was beginning. Some species would resist this change. Others would embrace it. But no one could deny the central truth. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. Months later, the first human delegation arrived at the Council headquarters on a permanent basis. They established an embassy that, predictably, looked nothing like the elegant structures other species built. It was a squat, heavily reinforced building that could probably survive a direct meteor strike. Inside, human diplomats worked to build relationships with other species, bringing their characteristic directness and pragmatism to galactic politics. Trade agreements began to form. Human engineering firms found clients among species who needed robust solutions for harsh environments. Human security forces began patrolling regions of space that other species avoided. Human researchers collaborated with galactic scientists, bringing fresh perspectives to ancient problems. Not everything went smoothly. Cultural misunderstandings created diplomatic incidents. Human directness sometimes offended species accustomed to more subtle communication. Human ships, with their crude appearance and loud engines, were banned from some of the more refined worlds. But gradually, humanity found its place in the galactic community. The Prometheus itself became something of a legend. The ship that had announced humanity's arrival continued to serve as the flagship of the human fleet. It participated in joint military exercises with Council forces, where its unusual capabilities often surprised and impressed observers. The vessel became a symbol of humanity's approach to challenges. Practical, determined, and effective even if not elegant, Commander Vasquez eventually became Admiral Vasquez, leading humanity's growing fleet and serving as a voice for human interests in galactic affairs. She never forgot the moment when the Council chose to recognize humanity rather than oppose them. She worked tirelessly to ensure that humanity lived up to the promise she had made, proving through actions that humans deserved their place among the stars. As for the Council, they learned valuable lessons from humanity's emergence. They realized they had become complacent, assuming that technological advancement followed predictable paths. The humans had shown that there were multiple routes to achieving spacefaring capability. The Council began paying more attention to primitive species, offering guidance rather than isolation, partnership rather than dismissal. The galaxy was richer for humanity's presence. The crude, determined species from the small blue world brought fresh energy and new perspectives to an ancient civilization. They reminded everyone that progress came not just from elegant technology, but from determination, adaptability, and the refusal to give up in the face of impossible odds. The monster ship that had terrified the Council became a bridge between humanity and the galaxy. The Prometheus represented everything humans were: tough, determined, imperfect, but ultimately successful through sheer force of will. It was a reminder that being civilized was not about having the most advanced technology or the most elegant solutions. It was about surviving, adapting, and never giving up on the dream of reaching the stars. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the stars. If you loved seeing humanity claim its place in the galaxy, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell for more amazing HFY stories. Give this video a like if you enjoyed watching humanity prove the doubters wrong, and share it with your friends who love epic sci-fi tales. What kind of story would you like to see next? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. Until next time, keep reaching for the stars.